Welcome, everyone. My name is Dr. Lesliam Quirós-Alcalá, and in this module, we will focus on adolescents and children in the workforce. Here are the learning objectives for this module. In this section, we will learn about some demographics among working youth, as well as child labor laws in the United States. So first, let's start with the definition of working youth. The United Nations defines youth as individuals between the ages of 15 and 24 years of age. And even though, as a general rule, 14 years of age is a minimum age for employment in the United States, in the non-agricultural sector, statistics on youth in the workforce are reported for those who are between the ages of 16 and 24 years of age by the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics, or BLS. In the United States, children under 14 years of age are permitted to work in the agricultural sector, as we will discuss in more detail later on. Now, let's take a look at the trends based on sex and racial and ethnic distribution among working youth in the United States. Here, we have statistics for employment among youth in the U.S. in 2020 during the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic around July 2020 and 2 years later in 2022. In 2020, there were an estimated 17.5 million youth working compared to about 21 million youth in 2022. Still, while the number of employed youth increased by about 3.5 million during this period, the statistics on the percent distribution by sex and ethnicity have remained relatively the same as seen in this figure. In general, among working youth between the ages of 16 and 24 years of age, the majority identifies as white, followed by Hispanic or Latino, then Black or African American, and finally Asian. So where are youth employed? Data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, or BLS, indicates that the majority of youth work in the private sector. Among those working in the private sector, it is estimated that about 24%, or 5.1 million youth, work in the leisure and hospitality sectors, followed closely by 20% working in the retail trade industry. The leisure and hospitality industry sector includes a broad category of fields within the service industry, such as lodging, food services, such as working at a fast food restaurant, event planning, theme parks, transportation, and other tourism-oriented products and services. Other non-private sectors in which youth are employed include agriculture and related industries, followed by those who are self-employed, unincorporated, and unpaid family workers, and lastly, those working in government. So what about trends on youth employment and projections for youth in the labor force in the United States? The youth labor force participation rate has been on a long-term downward trend, and this decline is projected to continue as seen in this figure based on data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. So why has the youth labor force participation declined and remained low? Well, there are several contributing factors that explain this downward trend. In recent years, there has been a shift towards increased emphasis on school and college attendance, as data show that workers with more education tend to have a higher pay and lower unemployment. Data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics also show that the proportion of high school graduates who go on to college immediately following graduation has trended upwards. Additionally, more youth are attending school during the summer when compared to previous years. Furthermore, pressures to increase educational achievement and to better prepare high school students for college have grown, as shown by changes in coursework. Youth attending high school are now taking more demanding and advanced courses, including those specifically designed for college preparation, so dedicating more time to studies translates to less time for participation in the labor force. In addition to demanding coursework, the time that teens spend on school-related activities can take away from many hours left in the day for a job. This can include extracurricular activities such as clubs and sports. Some schools also expect prospective graduates to spend time volunteering to graduate. In addition, the starting dates for many schools have shifted earlier into the summer, oftentimes to extend the school year so that students have more time to prepare for standardized tests in preparation for college attendance. With a shorter summer off from school, students may be less likely to get a summer job and employers may be less inclined to hire them. Another reason for this downward trend in employment is that given the high cost of college tuition, youth earnings may not make much of a difference in tuition expenses. There is also financial aid and government tax credits available, so the need to work for college may not be as pressing. Lastly, while youth have seen reductions in their labor force participation rates, participation among the 55 and over age group has been growing and is projected to continue increasing. This means that youth who do want jobs may face some competition. Despite the downward trend in the labor force by youth, Statistics from the National Institutes of Occupational Safety and Health, or NIOSH, report that in 2020 alone, there were an estimated 17.3 million workers under the age of 25, representing close to 12% of the total workforce in the United States. In 2020, about 352 workers under the age of 25 died from work-related injuries, with 26 deaths reported among workers under the age of 18. Compared with adult workers, young workers between the ages of 15 and 24 years of age experience higher rates of job-related injuries. The incidence rate for non-fatal injuries for workers between the ages of 16 and 19 was close to 150 per 10,000 full-time employees, or FTEs. Additionally, the rate of work-related injuries treated in emergency departments for workers between the ages of 15 and 24 years was reported to be 1.5 times greater than the rate for workers who were 25 years of age or older. This disproportionate risk of injury among young workers highlights the need for sustained, targeted public health efforts to prepare this population with essential workplace safety and health competencies before they enter the workforce. Employers are responsible for maintaining safe and healthy workplaces. This includes complying with safety and health by closely supervising young workers and delivering job-specific training, in addition to making sure they follow child labor laws. So now, let's go over the United States child labor laws that are meant to protect working youth. In the United States, the U.S. Department of Labor is a sole federal agency that monitors child labor and enforces child labor laws. The most sweeping federal law that aims to restrict the employment and abuse of child workers is the Fair Labor Standards Act, or FLSA. The child labor provisions in this act aim to protect the educational opportunities of youth and prohibit their employment in jobs that are detrimental to their health and safety. Generally speaking, the Fair Labor Standards Act, or FLSA, sets the minimum age for employment, which is 14 years of age for non-agricultural jobs. It also restricts the hours youth under the age of 16 may work and prohibits youth under the age of 18 from being employed in hazardous occupations. The FLSA also establishes sub-minimum wage standards for certain employees who are under the age of 20 years. Full-time students, student learners, apprentices, and workers with disabilities. Sub-minimum wages refers to those workers that are tipped who may be paid less than the minimum wage, such as those working as a waitress or a waiter. It's important to note that the federal youth employment provisions under the FLSA do not require working papers or work permits, though many states do. They also do not restrict the number of hours or times of day that workers 16 years of age and older might be employed, although again, some states may have different regulations. Additionally, they do not regulate or require such things as breaks, meal periods, or fringe benefits, nor do they regulate such issues as discrimination and harassment, though other federal and state laws may apply. In the United States, every state has laws specifically dealing with child labor issues. Employers must comply with both federal law and applicable state laws. When federal and state standards are different, the rules that provide the most protection to youth workers will apply. The Fair Labor Standards Act, or FLSA, rules affect both full and part-time workers in the private sector and in the federal, state, and local governments. These rules vary depending on the age of the worker and his or her occupation. So let's briefly go over what some of these rules are by age and occupation. So under the Fair Labor Standards Act, youth between the ages of 14 and 15 years of age may work outside of school hours in various non-manufacturing, non-mining, non-hazardous jobs under certain conditions. Working youth can only work between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., except from June through Labor Day, when nighttime hours are extended to 9 p.m. Other restrictions include that they can only work up to 3 hours on a school day, including Fridays, up to 18 hours during a week when school is in session, or 23 hours if they're enrolled in an approved work experience and career program, up to 8 hours on a non-school day, and up to 40 hours per week on non-school weeks, such as in the summer when school is not in session. Also, youth between the ages of 14 and 15 years cannot work in any job that is deemed hazardous as established by the Secretary of Labor. Examples of some of these hazardous occupations are noted on this slide. In the U.S., 16 is a basic minimum age for employment in the non-agricultural sector. Under FLSA, youth between the ages of 16 and 17 have no restrictions in terms of hours or days for any work that is non-hazardous as declared by the Secretary of Labor, although some states may have some restrictions. For example, in the state of Maryland, youth between the ages of 16 and 17 years of age may spend no more than 12 hours in a combination of school hours and work hours each day, and they must be allowed to have at least 8 consecutive hours of non-work and non-school time in each 24-hour period. Once a youth worker reaches 18 years of age, they are no longer subject to the federal youth employment provisions and may work in any hazardous or non-hazardous occupation. The FLSA establishes a minimum age of 18 years for those non-agricultural occupations that the Secretary of Labor finds and declares to be particularly hazardous. As of 2016, the 17 hazardous occupations, which include a partial or total ban on the occupations or industries they cover, include those listed here. This information is provided by the Department of Labor website, so please remember to always refer to the most recent data available. So as I noted earlier, while in general the legal minimum age in the United States is 14, there are exceptions in the agricultural sector. So what are the minimum age standards for agricultural employment? Well, youth, ages 16 and above, may work in any farm at any time, while those who are between the ages of 14 and 15 years of age may work outside school hours in jobs not declared hazardous by the Secretary of Labor. Youth workers between the ages of 12 and 13 years of age may work outside of school hours in non-hazardous jobs on farms that also employ their parents or with written parental consent. Additionally, youth under 12 years of age may work outside of school hours in non-hazardous jobs with parental consent, but only on farms where none of the employees are subject to the minimum wage requirements of the FLSA. For example, youth between 10 and 11 years of age may hand harvest short-season crops outside school hours for no more than 8 weeks between June and October if their employers have obtained special waivers from the Secretary of Labor. Youth of any age may work at any time in any job on a farm owned or operated by their parents. And unlike other jobs, the law sets no limit on how early in the morning, how late at night, or how many hours children can work in agriculture, as long as they do not work during school hours. So what is meant by hazardous jobs as it relates to agricultural work? By law, children working in agriculture can do jobs at age 16 that health and safety experts deem particularly hazardous. In all other sectors, workers must be 18 to do any type of hazardous work. Some examples of occupations declared hazardous by the Secretary of Labor where minors under 16 may not work include those listed here, including operating select machinery and equipment and handling or applying toxic agricultural chemicals. For more information, please make sure to check the most updated information from the Wage and Hours Division of the U.S. Department of Labor. Unfortunately, these age exemptions for agricultural work among youth in the Fair Labor Standards Act fail to protect all working youth and young children. It is estimated that about 500,000 youth between the ages of 8 and 18 years work in agriculture in the United States. Currently, there is a prevalent disparity of workplace standards under the FLSA between children in the agricultural and industrial non-agricultural workforce, with industrial child workers having more protections regarding the minimum age, work hours, and hazardous work conditions. Unfortunately, child workers are fatally injured more often in agriculture than in any other industry in the United States, demonstrating the need for better legal protections for children working in that industry. Youth in this industry also work very long hours, often forcing them to quit school and forcing them to be exposed to adverse working conditions while they're still developing, including exposures to pesticides, which can severely impact their growth and development and could increase the risk of adverse health effects. The FLSA also fails to protect youth working in agriculture due to the lax enforcement of child labor laws overall by the U.S. Department of Labor, which is exacerbated by workers' fears of reporting violations to authorities. While many child farm workers are U.S. citizens, their parents may be undocumented or hold short-term agricultural visas, leaving the entire family in fear of deportation. Labor standards and their enforcement apply to all workers, irrespective of their immigration status. However, many still fear retaliation or are not aware of their worker rights. Child labor on U.S. farms also violates the United States international legal obligations under the Worst Forms of Child Labor Convention of the International Labor Organization, or ILO. In fact, the ILO Committee of Experts have expressed serious concerns regarding the significant number of injuries and fatalities suffered by U.S. youth working in agriculture and the exemptions in U.S. law that allow young children to work. Here we have some statistics related to youth in agriculture in the U.S. It is reported that youth worker fatalities in agriculture exceed all other industries combined, according to a 2022 Childhood Agricultural Injuries Fact Sheet published by the National Children's Center for Rural and Agricultural Health and Safety. Data show that approximately every 3 days, a child dies in an agriculture-related incident, and each day, at least 33 children are seriously injured. The leading reported sources of fatalities involve transportation, which includes tractors and all-terrain vehicles or ATVs, and contact with machinery. From 2001 to 2015, close to 50% of all fatal occupational injuries to young workers occurred in agriculture. There are also 4 times more actual occupational injuries than are reported, and as many as 88% of agricultural injuries and illnesses are not captured by traditional surveillance methods. Based on restricted data from the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics, or BLS, researchers at the National Institutes of Occupational Safety and Health have summarized the fatality rates among youth by industry, and as we can see in these figures, fatality rates among youth working in agriculture, or ag, far exceed those reported in other industries. So in summary, the U.S. Department of Labor records statistics for youth between the ages of 16 and 24 years of age, even though children as young as 10 years of age can work in agriculture. The Fair Labor Standards Act, or FLSA, establishes minimum wage, overtime pay, record-keeping, and youth employment standards affecting employees in the private sector and in the federal, state, and local governments. As part of the FLSA, there are provisions designed to protect the educational opportunities of minors and prohibit their employment in jobs and under conditions detrimental to their health or well-being. However, exemptions in place fail to protect youth working in agriculture when it comes to minimum age, wages, record-keeping, and other protections.